Now I'm on to somebody's name who I can definitely pronounce. This is Rob Rogers. And Rob, let me tell everybody a little bit about you. Rob Rogers is the former political cartoonist for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. After 25 years and many, 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 many awards, including the OPC's Cartooning Award, Rob was fired in 2018 by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette management for drawing cartoons critical of President Trump. Rob continues to draw political cartoons for counterpoint.com and tinyview.com, and he is syndicated by Andrews McMeel Syndication. Take it away, Rob.
All right. So I'm going to start out with showing you a photograph, because people are always interested in how we come up with ideas. Most of the time, it's kind of what Patrick described, where you're sitting with your sketchbook and you're slaving over ideas and writing down as many topics as you can think of, and then going and sitting and staring out the window or whatever it is for you. And that's usually the way it goes. But once in a while, once in a blue moon, the creative cartoon gods give us a gift. And okay, so one day I'm watching cable news, and Netanyahu is speaking at the United Nations. So you can show the photograph. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister. Here he is speaking, and he's talking about Iran and the nuclear threat of Iran. And so I was so like flabbergasted when he brought up this image, this diagram that he brought with him, audio visual. And I thought, oh my God, it looks like a Warner Brothers cartoon bomb, and so I came up with this idea almost instantly. Let's show the next slide. We have the Iranian President Ahmadinejad, and he's sitting around the table saying, okay, who leaked our nuclear bomb design to Netanyahu? And of course it says Acme, because that's the Warner Brothers cartoons. And there's Wile E. Coyote looking very, very guilty there. And this is just a way to point out that sometimes the ideas do come quicker than others, although we all have to have that history. Like, I watched hours and hours of Warner Brothers cartoons, so my mind is warped that way. But the other thing I wanted to point out is, as cartoonists, one of the things we do is we offer some levity and some humor to issues like nuclear holocaust, and that's really kind of one of the thrilling things about the job. It's not that we can always make a joke about something, because some issues are much more serious than others. But sometimes it's such a nice departure when we can, with all the bad news going on, we can make people laugh. So I really enjoy that part of the job so much. And so in keeping with that theme, the next cartoon is also about nuclear annihilation. And this was our previous president when he was meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. And here he is saying, "You're an unhinged, childish nuclear despot with insane hair." And Kim says, "I know you are, but what am I?" And this cartoon, obviously this was a very serious issue that here we have these two nuclear leaders with their fingers on the buttons, and they're both a little bit crazy. But people loved it, and they laughed at this cartoon, and I got a lot of people saying good things about it. The next cartoon is also a cartoon where I employ humor to get across a subject that is very difficult. This is when the Pope Benedict at the time, when they first got a Twitter account. And so here he is saying, "OMG, this 21st century technology is great for spreading my 15th century views on gays, women, and contraception, LOL." And my favorite part there is hashtag say 10 Hail Marys. But this idea that the church was going through all of these scandals, not to mention, the pedophile priest scandals that they were dealing with and covering up, and yet their views on women and everything else and contraception. So these are difficult topics. And, we do sometimes do cartoons about people that are revered, and people get very upset about it. But in this case, this is one of the few, what I call my Pope cartoons, one of the few Pope cartoons that didn't get me into trouble or get killed by my publisher. But yes, so this is kind of a way to sort of find some humor in something that is otherwise oppressive, really. Okay, but not everything is funny. So let's go to the next cartoon. This is a 4-panel cartoon that I did about Syria. Let's wait for it to come up here. So we all remember the graphic photographs of the boy on the beach, and then the boy that was in the airplane when he was recovered, when he was rescued, and so Russia's bombing, and then the end result was that nothing was done, and so we still have Syria in a lot of trouble. And I think that the reason I drew this cartoon is not to point blame at any one individual, but to sort of say, cartoonists are just like everybody else in the world. We feel helpless to not be able to do anything. And so this is kind of what we can do, is to sort of draw more attention to an issue and point out, the inhumanities that are happening. And so to bring it full circle, I drew a similar cartoon about what's happening in Ukraine right now, also involving Russia. So if you could show the next one. And,
is it up there?
I'm not seeing it yet, but
okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is just sort of a 4-panel, or the first 3 panels are all about places where Russia was involved in what one might call war crimes. So the first one, I call it an atrocity. Syria, I call it a war crime. Ukraine, I call it genocide. And here's NATO saying, I call it none of my business. And this wasn't meant to be a funny cartoon, but it was just sort of meant to show how, how it seems like, because, especially because Russia has nuclear weapons, that's sort of the theme here. Nuclear weapons and condoms, I guess, would you say with the Pope. But that's sort of the theme here, is just the idea that when nuclear weapons are involved, it's not as easy to just sort of send in troops or send in weapons to make a difference. So, but I do like the idea of sort of giving a historical arc to things sometimes. And that can be a fun way to get an idea across.
Well, thanks, Rob.
Sure.
I've got a cartoon of yours I want to share.
Okay.
And the thing is that all the people you've shown these handful of cartoons, which is just a small spattering of your countless cartoons you've created over your career. And the cartoon I have here is from back in 1988 and has a debate
Oh, wow.
between Michael Dukakis and the then US President George H.W. Bush. And, the cartoon's got a joke that still works today, where Dukakis says, when was the War of 1812? And Bush says, oh no, a trick question. And the thing is that Rob, it was so amazing to me, the criteria, or shall I say one of the criteria to me that makes a cartoonist amazing, special, and worthy of an enormous respect, is one that has a long track record. Because basically any reasonable cartoonist should come up with a half dozen, maybe even 10 good cartoons in a year, if you're doing many, hundreds maybe in a year. But to do them consistently good year in, year out, in Rob's case, decade out, is astonishing. And Rob has been doing amazing work all this time. So this is my way of saluting you.
True.
And thanking you for letting me show this cartoon again.
Well, I appreciate it. And when you told me you were going to show me this cartoon, I went back and looked up the story. So the story is that George H.W. Bush was speaking to a group, and he, I think it was a veterans group, and he said, remember Pearl Harbor, this is Pearl Harbor Day, but it was September 7th, 1988. And so there were people in the crowd going, no. And he finally realized his mistake. but of course, cartoonists had a field day with it. And so this one was one of the ones I did about him debating, with the trick question.
Well, and now, Patrick, you've got the cartoon you want to talk
Oh,
about.
I have 100 cartoons from Rob I want to show, but I had to pick only one. So for me, Rob, you are the definition of the job of the political cartoonist. Your cartoons like this one are very political, opinionated, hard-hitting, to the point. And you did this cartoon on in a context that you need to describe to us, because it was a cartoon that was part of a series of cartoons that were killed by your editor. Tell us the story behind that cartoon, please.
So I'll try to make this brief, but yeah, my publisher, who for 25 years had left me alone pretty much and had patted me on the back every time I came into the office, had decided that he liked Donald Trump. And so there was talk of an endorsement, and my editor basically walked away from the paper because he didn't want to endorse Trump. Anyway, I lasted about 2 years, and then the publisher hired an editor to replace the other editor, and he was basically hired to change the page over to be more conservative, and also, I think, to get me in line. And we did try to work together. I would change my ideas often, but just to give you an example, most years I would have 1 or 2 cartoons killed, often about the Pope, by the way, but because Pittsburgh's very Catholic. But in this 3-month period that I had this editor, he killed 19 cartoons. So that gives you a sense of how they were really cracking down on me to try to get me in line, to change my viewpoints, basically, even though I was hired to do these cartoons. So this week that I did this one, I was going away to the NCS, the National Cartoonist Society meeting, and this cartoon was for Memorial Day, and I drew it, and then I sent it in, and I was on my way. I was in the car driving to Philadelphia for the NCS when my editor called me and said, "Sorry, we're not running that one. It's too harsh." And then that was the cascading from there. There were 6 in a row that week that had been killed. And then the following week I was fired. Every day I tried to contact them and talk to them on the phone or email and ask them, what's going on? Can't we meet and talk about this? But they had their head sort of in this space where they wanted me to either shape up or ship out. So I left. Well, I was fired, but
too bad for them.
Yes.
Too bad for them. That's a real shame. Real shame.